Next, I would like to invite Mr. Rajeev, YSR, Chief Mentor, EV Masterclass, Ed Investment and Promotion, Government of Andhra Pradesh, India.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mishma, and a very, very good evening from India to all the global leaders that are here. I think one of the speakers rightly mentioned, who is a leader? A leader is someone who could inspire, who had the ability to inspire others to dream big, work harder, achieve bigger, and thus contribute much positively and at a bigger, larger scale to the rest of the mankind and the world. But unfortunately, most often, these leaders and their efforts are ignored, or rather taken for granted. Probably the thought could be that it's an obligation just because they're leaders, and it's no longer an entitlement. But I think at a juncture like that, I must really appreciate the hard work and the efforts put in by the Global Council for Promotion of International Trade, GCPIT, the chair and the co-chair, Mr. Santosh and Ms. Aparna. I think we will take a pause here and then congratulate you both and appreciate for the wonderful efforts that you have put in, Aparna and Santosh, because it's not easy to run a campaign like this, mobilize 300 applications, and let me tell you, the applications and then the questions were not easy. Unless somebody has done it in their life, and unless somebody has experienced and demonstrated those results, those are very, very difficult to fill up. And again, they have these word limits, etc. I mean, I had a real tough time filling up that particular sheet, right? Now, reviewing 300 such answers, interviewing almost all of them, and then finally churning the top 17 as the best global emerging leaders, I think that itself is a very, very inspiring job that you both have done, right? And we cannot just but appreciate. And also at the same time, it's a wonderful opportunity to meet all the other global emerging leaders here, because I'm sure in the realm and in the sphere that we have been influencing the ecosystem, we have been influencing the society, the community, and the people around in the best possible way that we could. But I'm just imagining and wondering, what if all the 17 leaders with their best strengths come together, collaborate and contribute? I'm sure the world will no longer remain the same as it is. And I think while they have done their part of bringing us together here, I think it's our responsibility from here to collaborate with one another, to kind of contribute to one another, complement one another, and then make this world a better place for the other generations and then the younger generations to come. So with this, once again, very much honored. I firstly thank my God for this wonderful opportunity that he has given, and great. And thank you very much. And kudos and cheers to all of you. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Rajeev.
Yeah.
Next.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are joining us from. Global Council for the Promotion of International Trade, or GCPIT, is proud to welcome you to this special interview series in connection with the Global Emerging Leaders Awards 2022. I'm Aparna Kumar, the Global Co-Chairperson of GCPIT and your host for the show. Global Council for the Promotion of International Trade is an organization based in India, South Africa, US, UK, and UAE with board and council member representation across the world. We at GCPIT believe in fostering leadership across different levels. Recently, we have been reflecting on the significance of perspective in our role as leaders. When we advance from being an individual contributor to a leader, our perspective starts changing. We gain access to new information, have conversations with new people, and think about things in ways we didn't have to before. These changes or learnings have immense power, and we believe that this interview series will help us and many aspiring future leaders to gain new perspectives, especially global perspectives from these emerging leaders. Today, we have with us such a leader to tell us about his perspectives on leadership while leading his venture. We have with us Mr. Rajeev YSR, who is a dynamic and motivational leader with more than 12 plus years of experience across different parts of the world in P&L, sales, strategy, operations, product, and project management. He completed his bachelor's and master's from IIT Madras with an incredible track record of building high-performing teams, products, and businesses and delivering results. Rajeev has been recently recognized as 40 under 40 India's young dynamic EV leaders. He has been evangelizing and crusading the electric vehicle adoption, representing EVs in various national and international platforms. He also works closely with Niti Aayog, Rocky Mountain Institute, the Urban Mobility Labs, EV policymaking of Delhi government, and also with Telangana state government. He is currently nurturing and running EV cohorts in partnership with the government of Telangana to nurture talent and entrepreneurs in the field of the electric vehicles industry. He's a mentor to startups and entrepreneurs, a business coach, and has so far coached more than 50,000 participants through online and offline modes. Congratulations, Rajeev, for being nominated for GCPIT's Emerging Leaders Awards. We are proud to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Aparna. And a special shout out to the GCPIT, who have been doing a phenomenal job, right, in driving the best leadership principles, driving the best leadership practices, and also helping us to learn from the multiple, I would say, dimensions across the world. And a great shout out to GCPIT, to you, and Mr. Santosh, the founder director of GCPIT. Thank you very much for this evening.
Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us today. But before we begin talking about leadership, though I read your profile, I would like to hear from you. You have an amazing journey at this very young age. How did all this begin? And what's your background? And what are you currently doing?
Yeah, that's great, Aparna. Thank you very much. And I like the way, right? Any child that is born in India, there is always a predetermined, I would say, profession or confession or spell on him, right? He would either become a doctor or an engineer. So I think there was a spell that I would become an engineer. But then I thought, okay, let me make at least a little bit difference to what has been already prejudiced. Let me make it from one of the best of the institutes across the world. So that's how I completed my bachelor's and master's from IIT Madras in the year 2010 in mechanical, bachelor's and master's in automotive engineering. And since then, I worked across multiple organizations in multiple functions. I started my career with TVS Motor Company as a senior design engineer, worked with them for about a year. And while I was working with TVS, I was always fascinated about interacting with people, talking to people, presenting the ideas, taking them forward, than to merely work with the ProE or an AutoCAD software and then prepare and produce drawings. That was when I joined Bosch Global Leadership Program, called the Junior Managers Program, where the young, I would say, professionals from premium institutes are recruited, and they are groomed for about 2 years across functions, across geographies, and across companies within Bosch Group towards their global leadership roles. So I think that was one of the best things that happened to me in my life. That's what I would say. Because with Bosch, I had the opportunity to work across sales, product management, R&D, production, almost all the functions for almost 4.5 to 5 years. I also had the opportunity to work at the Bosch headquarters in Germany and understand the bird's eye view of how we all call it, right? Germans go on one single line, and that's called perfection. And I was one witness to it, right? Having worked with Bosch as well as IIT Madras was again German. It's a collaborated with German company and German government, right? So I think I could literally experience and witness it. Later on, I moved to Mahindra and Mahindra, worked with them for about 2 years in one of their corporate startups. And that was when, after working for about 2 years with Mahindra, was when the actual magic happened. Though it was a short stint, I joined one of my friends' startup called Topper.com. Now it was acquired by Byju's. It was into EdTech. And that was where I had this first experience of leading sales team to the quantum of 200 members. And these are all direct sales associates whose job is to just go and sell the product. I have never had the experience of dealing with sales team and with such kind of a quantum, though it was just a 1 year stint, but that was where I learned, right, most of the principles which I apply even today and which give me results. And then my foray into electric vehicles has begun in 2018, when I joined Gati Logistics, that is India's largest logistics company, as their electric business head. In fact, when I joined, we were the first ones to start electric vehicle operations across the country from IKEA in Hyderabad. The work was recognized and was published in World Economic Forum too. And then we white labeled this solution and sold it to Amazon, Big Basket, Flipkart, Grofers. In fact, all the last mile deliveries that we are talking about right now have been started almost 4.5, 5 years ago by us. And since then, the journey continued, and I fell in love with EVs. I fell in love with the industries. I started helping governments, non-governments, startups, incubators, as well as the OEMs in helping them strategize their roadmaps and in helping them their growth strategies, especially in EVs. And since then, I've been working in the EV ecosystem, nurturing the talent to become the next entrepreneurs, and also participating in the policy frameworks and other things. So this is just about me, Aparna. And apart from this, very recently I've picked up another hobby or another profession, I would say, that is to nurture and create entrepreneurs. And I've started this as CXO Club. That's the initiative, where the intent is catch the students when they are young, in their third year, fourth year of graduation, sow the seeds of entrepreneurship within them, help them understand everything from the idea generation, validation, product market fit, MVPs, until the, I would say, the valuation and then the fundraising, and then let them decide what to do post that, right? So this also I'm doing with multiple incubators and organizations like T-Hub, ISB Hyderabad, and many other universities. And yes, so this is just about myself, and thank you very much, Aparna.
I think that's an amazing journey you just shared, and your energy is really, really contagious. And I always see in your sessions, you are really inspiring. And since you have had a very good global experience, if you had to pick 4 or 5 words or short phrases to describe how a successful leader in a global environment operates or behaves, what would they be?
So I think if you were to be a successful leader from the global perspective, you need to, number one, have the sense of inclusivity. See, generally what happens, Aparna, when you reach a leadership role, your distance from the last mile to you automatically increases, right? Though it is not by design, but that's how the system is. And most of the times, this is what I call 24 degrees versus 42. Most of the decisions were made under the air-conditioned conference rooms of 24 degrees, while the actual battle is happening on the field at 42 degrees, right? And if you do not have this concept of inclusivity and getting the right information from the market by connecting with your last mile, I would say, employee or last mile person, you will only start making 25-degree strategies, which would only work for the conference rooms and the presentations. But if you were to make an impact, and if you were to bring that change, and if you want to really see the scale that your decisions bring, you need to be connected with 42 while you are still stationed in 24. So I think the first and foremost important thing is the sense of inclusivity that as a global leader, one must inculcate and possess. Yeah.
So how would you describe the differences in the organization and culture between a global environment and a more local or regional environment?
Yeah. So I think this is a wonderful question. And let me start with the local or a regional organization from the first perspective. Generally, the local organization's culture is predominantly influenced by the local ecosystem of the particular land and thought process and leadership of the local leaders, management, and governance. Whereas when you look at the organizational culture that is from a global perspective, that is influenced by the global businesses, best practices, and it is completely anchored upon the corporate governance that is put in place. So it also gives an opportunity for a lot of cross-learning of best practices across different regional environments that is right to happen within the global perspective. So the major first difference in terms of these two cultures is the local organization is for some reason confined or bounded by the influence and the culture of the local leaders and the local governance, whereas the global organization will always have the opportunity to look at the best of these things. For example, let's take, say, again, not to offend any geography or so, but this is just for pure example perspective. While I was working with Bosch, during the season of Christmas, I happened to visit Kolkata for some of my meetings. So I was, that time, Tata Hitachi, which is based out of Kharagpur, was one of my clients. So I had to visit to Tata Hitachi along with my local colleagues from Kolkata, right? Now, when I landed there on 20th and 21st, the entire environment in Calcutta is very, very much chilled because they are around the Christmas corner. And then what I thought is probably because they are around the Christmas corner, they are chilled. Then I made multiple visits to that particular place while working with multiple organizations. one thing I've noticed is the culture there is a slow tempo, nothing to really rush and worry about. And there is necessarily no sense of urgency. However, while this is of the local environment and local governance and the local work culture. However, if you look at, for example, an Amazon warehouse that is operating out of Calcutta, you will see that despite this Amazon warehouse operating out of Calcutta, where the local culture is a bit relaxed and non-rushy, you will still find that the local warehouse of Amazon still runs on the same leadership principles of Amazon without being influenced by the local or the regional environment. And at the same time, these guys have the opportunity to learn from the best practices across the world. So I think the differences is this: you locally you are confined unless you make a conscious effort to look around and pick for the best practices. But in the global perspective, what happens is it happens by default.
And you are into the EV industry. How is your business's purpose evolving? We all know that electric vehicles are the in thing right now, right? So how is it evolving?
Fantastic. So I would always believe that whenever a new industrial revolution is happening, many hands come together on the deck, and there are few hands who act as catalysts. And these are the change makers, these are the trailblazers, and these are the enablers, which would add that X factor to that industrial revolution that is happening at that point of time, who are crucial in solving certain problems which are generally not available or not visible by the public with the naked eye. But only when those problems are solved, such kind of a growth is expected. And from my perspective, I think we are rightly positioned as those catalysts and as those enablers from the EV ecosystem. Because if you look at the EV ecosystem right now, especially from the Indian perspective, the biggest threat to EV industry is not the funds, is not the technology, is not any of those things that we might perceive. The biggest threat to the EV industry is non-availability of relevant talent pool in the EV industry. Unfortunately, though India has been really known for its services and IT, the number of core engineers that are passing out of our universities is coming down. Every engineer, despite of their background, mechanical, electrical, electronics, civil, metallurgy, etc., the temptation is to pick up a software or a programming language, place himself into a software company, do an MBA from there, become a programmer, and slowly move in that particular direction. If this is what happens, like the way India and the rest of the world are dependent upon the Chinese market, especially from the manufacturing perspective, very soon, India and again the rest of the world will depend upon again China for their core engineering services, right? So to ensure that it doesn't happen, we have taken this task of inspiring and encouraging young engineers to consider a beautiful, I would say, core that is coming up right now, which is EVs. Because EVs is such a subject. It needs mechanical engineers, it needs electrical engineers, electronics engineers, software engineers, materials metallurgists, as well as the chemical engineers, right? So I would say the purpose that we have taken is that let's encourage and nurture the talent pool in the EV industry and ensure that that particular problem is solved once for all. And I think the purpose is evolving slowly from just being, I would say, a talent nurturing perspective or a team. Now we are moving towards nurturing entrepreneurs in EVs, right? The students picked up and said, hey, you know what? Why do you have to work with somebody else? Why can't we start our own EV company? And now that's also happening. So I think the purpose is slowly evolving, and we are pretty happy with what's happening right now. Thank you.
I think that's amazing what you're doing. And what's your say on digitalization? How should companies approach digitalization?
Digitalization is a necessary devil. I'll tell you why. In fact, in the recent World Economic Forum that happened at Davos, Professor Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of World Economic Forum, he made a very, very interesting statement. And this is what the statement he made. Companies that don't embrace digitization and sustainability are going to soon become obsolete, right? And it is in fact very true, because the technology is not just growing, but changing at a very, very rapid stage. and even more aggressively in digital arena. If you look at the digital penetration that happened during the pandemic, right? One of the metrics let me pick is the growth of the e-commerce industry during the pandemic. The e-commerce industry registered a 64% growth during the pandemic, which was unprecedented in any of the previous years. What does that mean? That itself is a litmus test on how the internet, the connectivity, the mobile, and digitization has penetrated even to the rural areas. In fact, the pandemic enabled many people to turn towards a digital world. Now, the digital world or a digital presence has not become a choice, but it has become a mandate for anybody to survive. Look at ourselves, for example. Earlier, if at all we were to buy something, we visit a store and then we pick it up. But now, before we buy something, we do not visit the direct store until we understand everything about the product. We look at the reviews. We look at different varieties that are operated by their competitors in the same product. Oh, we do whatsoever R&D that is required. And finally, we also are comfortable in buying the product online, right? So that's the change, even as customers, we started experiencing these days. So any company that doesn't adopt digitalization, at the same time doesn't follow the path of sustainability, will no longer be relevant to the coming years.
I totally agree with you. You are a leader who works at the global level, right? So what was the most challenging difference in leadership or culture that you had to understand and overcome in a globalized economy?
Yeah, I think though I have answered it in the past, but let me talk about this very, I would say, in detail. I spoke in terms of the 24 degrees versus 42 degrees kind of a time. So generally, one is the inclusivity-led leadership. That was a challenge which I found, but I was able to build systems and processes where I was able to stay connected with the last mile employee and then accordingly make the decisions and other things. The second thing is, the second challenge is the leadership led by innovation. Generally, what happens is at the leadership level, when you're chasing and targeting certain metrics and trying to accomplish certain things, your day-to-day operations and your firefighting have the ability to suck the leader into mundane operations. And while what happens when such things happen is that as a leader, we fail to pause, exercise, demonstrate, demand, and inculcate the traits of innovation in the team. So I think that was something which I really felt very difficult. How do I stay relevant and innovative in my operations? At the same time, how do I inculcate these traits of innovation within my team while not compromising my day-to-day operations and my monthly and yearly targets? I think this has been a real great challenge that I've been facing. But again, trying to overcome, learning from the great leaders already that existed and solve this problem.
And with all these experiences, what different perspectives do you bring to the business as a leader?
So the difference perspective is simple. This has been told by multiple people multiple times, but let me repeat it, even if it is at the cost of repetition. Companies generally tend to believe into the fact that take care of your employee, take care of your customers are your gods, your customers are everything, etc. But this is what I strongly believe. Your team and your, I would say, employees are your biggest strength. You can be the strongest leader in the world, but any strongest chain can be as strong as its weakest link. If you do not take care of your team well, and if you allow those I would say discrepancies and those inefficiencies to creep into your team, how much ever strong you are, your strength is ultimately is what is the weakness of your team, right? So I think take good care of your team. Spend time in nurturing them. In fact, as a leader, while you appreciate them to evolve in their own personality, but if you believe that as a leader you're doing a great job, your job is to create miniature versions of your leaders in the company, right? I think this is what I strongly believe, that leaders need to spend time with their team. Leaders need to focus on their employees. And when they are nurtured well, when they are taken care well, when they are groomed well, let me tell you, not just the customers, the entire ecosystem and entire stakeholders, your vendors, your customers, everybody will be happy.
Right, I 100% agree with you. And what advice would you give to someone who has taken a senior leadership role to be more impactful in the role they have taken up?
Yeah. Can you repeat the question, please?
What advice would you give with your experience to someone who has taken a senior leadership role to be more impactful in the role they have just taken up?
Brilliant, brilliant. I think I give them 3 advices, right? Number 1, believe in the micro CEO concept. Now, what do you mean by micro CEO concept? This is something which I've noticed in some companies, and I've started practicing it even in my own company and my own operations. Now, what is this micro CEO concept is every person at that designated level or at his operations, whether it is into say HR, whether it is to purchase or whether it is logistics or whatever, he should be the one person responsible for all the decisions. Unless in doubt, one has to reach out to you. Otherwise, he should be equipped and he should be, I would say, he should be accountable to take every decision that is pertaining to his function or his department. So I strongly believe that we need to kind of create the concepts of micro CEOs. Generally, what happens is in the pursuit and in the temptation of taking de-risking and taking safer decisions, what we do is we tend to take all decisions by ourselves, and then the team merely becomes the postman who just transfer the information, right? So I think they should inculcate the habit of developing the micro CEO culture. This is number 1. Number 2, I think we are in such kind of a, I would say, intersection of the cultures where our previous leaders followed, I would say, leadership principles such as command, go, let it be done, such kind of a thing. Whereas the younger generation is more like, no, I need clarity where I'm going, why am I going, how am I supposed to do, right? Because at least we are a generation, we were able to see the leadership of that style where they say jump and then they wouldn't ask how high, right? They just do it, right? That's the regimental leadership we saw. And now we see the youngsters that are coming. Then the first question is why? Why do I have to jump? What is the purpose in it, right? So having been at the juncture, I was able to understand that one of the biggest reasons at this point, one of the biggest skill set any leader that has to pick up at this point of time is the ability to communicate and win the trust. Let me tell you, you can only win the trust of your team when you're able to communicate very transparently and show the bigger goal that you are visualizing to the rest of your team. It cannot happen that you alone will see the goal and you will ask the team to run after you. No, the team along with you should be able to visualize the dream together, should be able to see the goal together and chase together. So the first one is micro CEO concept. And then the second one is the ability to transparently communicate and show them the goal the way you see it. When you have these two, that means you have equipped your team with the vision and mission that you're carrying. At the same time, you have enabled them to be decision makers. What else you need? Your organization runs even without you. And that's the best thing that you could do as a leader, that your company doesn't need you to run it, but the team themselves will run it.
That's amazing. Are there any training or resources such as coaching to help you be better leaders? So all these concepts, how do we communicate to these leaders? Or is it just a lot of practice?
No. There is, of course, it is a combination of many. It is not just a simple off practice. Most of the times, Apan, I think, thank you very much for bringing this question, right? People underestimate the role of mentor. People underestimate the role of coach. Even the best batsman in the world called Virat Kohli or MS Dhoni, they are still coached. As long as they are ought to perform, they are ought to be coached, right? So whatever the biggest leader you are, you will need a coach. That is number 1. Number 2, you also need a disciple. Not only that you need a master or a coach, but you also need somebody whom you can coach. That's when what happens is you learn, you practice, you add your own perspective, and you pass on. All these things are important to ensure that your leadership principles are honed again and again and again. And that's the reason, and of course, a lot of reading of not just books, reading of people. See, because we have been what? A civilization of say 2000 years as of now, correct? Can there be any problem that we could see now which was not solved before? Absolutely no. Not in terms of technology, but in terms of the relations, in terms of the principles, in terms of the conflicts management, etc. Everything and anything would have already happened in the past, and some XYZ would have already kind of solved it. So why do you have to reinvent the wheel? Read their books, read their lives, read their styles, take the best out of them, inculcate them. And then what happens is, once you have everything internalized in you, then your decisions and your mode of actions will always be to the best of right the decisions that would be taken. And so I strongly believe that yes, everyone must have a mentor. Everyone must learn to read and interact with people, not just books. They have to read people. And that's why I also do. See, for example, I've coached more than 50,000 participants as of now across the globe. And this includes students, professionals, even the business leaders. A recent one I coached was for Indian Oil Corporation Limited. It's one of the biggest organizations in the country with 3 lakh crores of revenue. And I've coached the top 100 national sales heads. And each one of them handles probably 1,000 members of team and a few hundreds of crores of revenues, right? Even them, I mean, I'm not even equivalent to their years of experience, right, by age. But even then, when the right things are told, when the right things are spoken, I think they were able to absorb, right? So I continue to do this. I continue to nurture the CXOs. I continue to nurture the leaders in their leadership principles. And that's my way of discipling. And I continue to learn from my leaders and mentors too.
Right, I know that. I totally agree with you. All the solutions we can look at the past leaders and learn. And what do you think about the leadership team within the ecosystem? Are these available to the broader leadership team within the ecosystem itself?
Yeah.
How
so
do we make it available?
Unfortunately, Aparna, I think this is where GCPIT has to play a very, very strong leadership role. And I'm very, very happy that you're already doing it. There are not, I would say, many resources available to the broader leadership team at this point of time. Everybody is learning by themselves and everybody is trying to reinvent the wheel in silos and isolation. So I think from the global perspective, we need to create pool of leaders. We need to create pool of mentors. We need to create pool of thought leaders, right? Who could exchange their thoughts, who could nurture the younger generations, who can kind of expand the origins of their operations, and then who can influence, right, the leaders at a greater level. Right now, there are no such resources, and I really want GCPIT to fill this gap, erase the boundaries, let the cross-learning happen, and let leaders emerge from every nook and corner of the world.
We are on a mission to do that. And let us come to COVID now. We all know the pandemic affected all the businesses globally. What have you learned from leading in this crisis?
Yeah, true. Again, I will go back to again the history. Before COVID as a pandemic has hit us, our previous generations were hit by almost 3 such pandemics: World War I, World War II, and Spanish flu. I strongly believe that every crisis has an opportunity. For example, it is during World War I, many inventions, including the drones, right, were invented. During World War II, penicillin and ATMs, etc., were invented. And Spanish flu, what it finally made is it ensured that the sanitation facilities, right, the toiletries and the cleanliness is not just limited to the kings and queens and the nobles of the society, but it needs to, drainage system needs to be there everywhere so that the flu is not affecting, right? So we were able to learn something or the other from every crisis. And from pandemic, what I've learned, this is what I've learned, right? We are very good at adoption. You look at most of the companies, they were, of course, everybody was in shock, what to do, right? Things are completely different, but slowly people started adopting, organizations started adopting. We were able to contribute and produce the same results, even without not necessarily meeting physically, right? And one thing that I really learned during the crisis is this: you are doomed to fail only when you give up, right? Until you try, there is never a thing called failure. And as a humanity, I think all of us lived that during the pandemic, until it so happened that somebody was I would say, had to end the battle for pandemic, that was when the story was done. But otherwise, we continue to show our tenacity, we continue to show our perseverance, we continue to show our toughness, fighting until the last breath, right, from the bed, and we stood by one another. So my point is, there is never an end, there is never a thing called being a failure until we give it up. And during the pandemic, none of us gave up, and we will never give up again.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you spoke about leaders being inclusive. How do you promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace as a leader?
So, okay, let me put it this way. If you look at the I would say, if at all you have ever seen either the school of fish or the flocks of bird or the herds of animals that they go in groups, always the stronger ones, right, the mightier ones, they always take the outer edge. Okay, and then the meeker and the weaker ones are generally part of the school. And if there is an exhaustion in the herd or in the crowd, then what happens? The places change. People who are exhausted, basically who are defending, etc., towards the outer, I would say, sphere of the line, they come inside and then they go outside. Why am I sharing this particular thing is, this is exactly what I would say the leadership principle of inclusivity is. Now imagine like this: as a global leader, as a leader, are your decisions protecting the weakest stakeholder in your ecosystem? Are your decisions protecting the weakest stakeholder in your ecosystem, or are they just leaving them behind for their prey or for their predator to come and snatch away, right? So a leader from inclusivity perspective must always think that, are your decisions protecting the weakest, I would say, stakeholder in your ecosystem? And if the answer to your conscious is yes, you're protecting, that means you are on the path of inclusivity. Of course, leaders have to make certain hard choices, right, when deciding between what is morally right and what is professionally right. I'm not talking about those edge cases, because that's again subjective based on the context and situation, etc. But in general, are your decisions protecting the least weakest member in your ecosystem? And again, at the same time, the balance should be taken such a way that that cannot be taken as a comfort zone for people to remain weak and feeble, right? That's also again the other side of it. While you do all of this, you will continue to drive the team so that the average strength of the herd generally goes up, right? Yeah, I think that's as easy as it could be.
I think that's a very interesting way to look at it, and very powerful too. Before closing, what would you like to advise entrepreneurs who are dreaming to be successful in the global market?
I think the biggest, I would say, if at all one skill I would encourage the entrepreneurs to inculcate is, or one quality or one trait, is perseverance. Perseverance, right? Let me share a small story, Aparna, here. There was this a middle-aged man, okay, who would make his living by breaking the boulders. He would break the boulders into smaller stones, bring them to the quarry, and sell them to the construction. So one day, as part of his routine, he came to the quarry, to the bigger boulder, and then he saw a boulder which is almost 3 times his size. And all he had is a small hammer. So he started hammering that particular rock. He was hitting one after the other, 30, 40, 50, 60 strokes, and nothing happened. The rock was as solid as it was, but when he looked at his palms, when he looked at his hands, they were all bruising, right? The blood is just oozing out. He continued probably unto 70, 80, and he said, I think this is too tough for me. This is too big for me. This is too strong for me. Let me walk out today. And he started walking out. While he was walking away, he was able to remember the cries of his infant baby that was at home, who would cry for milk. And he was able to remember his darling wife, who would wait for him to bring some food so that she could prepare. Not able to give in to that particular kind of a pressure, he came back again. And with those bruised palms and hands, he took the hammer again. He started hammering it one more time. 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98. Nothing happened. The rock was as solid, as strong as it was. Now, that's it. This is the last stroke I'm going to give it. And if nothing works, I'm going to die. So he gathered all that he has within him, brought all of that into his hands, into his palms, and gave that 100th stroke. You know what happened? Such a huge boulder was split into two. Now, this story of this man is no different to an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur might be trying for months, for years, for decades, but the boulder is just staying still the same. The market is still the same. He was not able to penetrate. He was not able to redeem any success. He was not able to raise the revenue. He was not able to do anything. But then do you have the perseverance to go till that last stroke? One thing is sure, that's what I was telling, right? Until you give up, there is nothing called failure. Now tell me, was the boulder split into two because of the 100th stroke or 99 plus 100? It is, of course, 99 plus 100, right? So my advice to you entrepreneurs is, maybe you're at 91, maybe you're at 92, probably some of you are at 96, 97. Why do you give up, right? Why do you declare yourself to be a failure? Don't you give up. Don't you allow yourself to give up. Go that extra mile and hit that 100th one. And that boulder, like the way it gave it up to the tenacity of that man, your enterprise will give it up to you. Your market will give it up to you. Your customers will give it up to you, and you will be successful entrepreneur. So do not give up. Perseverance is the key.
That was a very powerful story to end with. Thank you so much, Rajeev, for joining us today and sharing us your very powerful and inspiring story. And let me congratulate you for the excellent work you're doing as a leader, mentor, and coach. And as you said, if you want to be a global leader, be inclusive, take care of your team, nurture them, work on developing micro CEOs, and communicate your vision in a very transparent way. Thank you so much, Rajeev, for joining us and sharing this brilliant and very valuable experience of yours. And thank you so much for appreciating GCPIT's efforts as well. We hope this discussion today would be helpful to many aspiring future leaders to gain new perspectives and climb the success ladder and become great leaders.
Thank you very much, Aparna. And thank you very much, Mr. Santosh. And all the very best to GCPIT. And GCPIT is actually right now, making those strokes. And very soon, we will see the complete leaders across the world would acknowledge the great work that GCPIT is doing. Thank you very much and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. And let me conclude. As you know, we are on a huge mission. I had mentioned it before also, a mission to impact the lives of 100 million entrepreneurs. We would like to invite you. I know that you're part of a team, and our listeners also to be part of this game-changing mission, Impact Mission 2030. Our aim is to build a global community of great leaders from 190 plus countries by 2030. Our listeners, if you're interested in joining us, you can mail us at contact@gcpit.us or find us on all social media as GCPIT Global. We'll be back with another emerging leader to inspire us and share us their perspective on leadership. Till then, this is Aparna Kumar signing off. Thank you once again, Rajeev YSR, for joining us today. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great day.